3,000 years ago, in the golden light of dawn breaking over ancient Jerusalem, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Picture, if you will, the most ambitious quest in human history, not for gold or precious stones, but for something far more valuable. King Solomon, whose very name has become synonymous with wisdom, was embarking on humanity's greatest treasure hunt. But this was no ordinary expedition. From the marble halls of his palace, Solomon dispatched royal scribes across the known world. Imagine these determined messengers racing along dusty caravan routes, their sandaled feet carrying them through scorching deserts and over mountain passes. They traveled to Egypt, where ancient sages had pondered the mysteries of existence for millennia. They journeyed to Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization itself, where scholars in towering ziggurats had been collecting wisdom since the dawn of writing. Consider the audacity of this vision. Here was a king who understood that true wealth lay not in accumulating territories or treasures, but in gathering the distilled wisdom of ages. These scribes weren't merely collecting random thoughts or casual observations. They were harvesting the most profound insights humanity had ever produced, sayings that had already proven their worth by surviving generations of telling and retelling around countless campfires and in countless homes. What emerged from this unprecedented gathering would become one of the most remarkable collections ever assembled. In exactly 31 chapters, one for each day of the longest months, Solomon and his successors crystallized nearly 1,000 individual proverbs. Think about that number for a moment. 1,000 pearls of wisdom, each one polished by centuries of human experience, each one carefully selected for its power to guide, comfort, and inspire. But here's what makes this collection truly extraordinary. These weren't merely wise sayings thrown together, haphazardly. Every single proverb was crafted with the precision of a master architect. Ancient Hebrew poetry follows patterns so intricate, so purposeful, that scholars still marvel at their sophistication today. The famous acrostic structure, where successive lines begin with each letter of the Hebrew alphabet in order, creates mental anchors that make these teachings virtually impossible to forget. Listen to the rhythm inherent in these ancient words. Even in translation, you can hear the careful cadence, the deliberate repetition, the way meaning builds upon meaning like waves lapping against a shore. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Feel how those words flow, how they create their own gentle momentum. The scribes who compiled these teachings understood something profound about human nature. They knew that wisdom shared in the quiet moments before sleep penetrates deeper than lessons taught in the harsh light of day. When the mind begins to release its grip on the day's concerns, when defenses lower and the heart becomes receptive, that's when truth can take root most deeply. Imagine those ancient households as evening shadows lengthened. Picture families gathering in the soft glow of oil lamps, the day's work finally done. This was when the real education began, not through stern lectures or formal instruction, but through the gentle sharing of wisdom that had sustained their ancestors through countless generations. The very architecture of these sayings reveals their purpose: to plant seeds of peace in restless minds preparing for sleep. But something even more remarkable was happening during these evening recitations. The ancient peoples discovered that contemplating wisdom before sleep didn't just educate the mind, it transformed the quality of rest itself. When thoughts turned from daily anxieties to timeless truths, when the mind focused on virtue rather than worry, something magical occurred. Sleep came more easily. Dreams grew more peaceful. Morning brought not just rest, but renewal. You see, these proverbs work on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, they offer practical guidance for daily living. A soft answer turns away wrath. He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty. These are lessons anyone can apply immediately, but deeper currents flow beneath these simple statements. Consider the neurological dance that begins when someone settles into bed with these ancient words. The brain, which moments before might have been churning with worries about tomorrow's responsibilities or regrets about today's failures, suddenly finds itself presented with something entirely different. Instead of anxious rumination, there's gentle wisdom. Instead of harsh self-criticism, there's compassionate guidance. The very structure of Hebrew parallelism, where thoughts are presented, then refined, then deepened, creates a rhythm that naturally slows the mind's racing. Pace. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. Notice how that image unfolds gradually, like dawn itself, creating a sense of peaceful progression rather than urgent demand. Ancient communities understood intuitively what modern science is only now beginning to measure. When the mind focuses on moral beauty, on virtue, on the deeper patterns that give life meaning, something physiological shifts. The body begins its natural preparation for restorative sleep. But they knew something else too, something that makes this collection unique among all the wisdom literature ever created. These proverbs weren't just meant to be understood, they were meant to be inhabited. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. This isn't merely a prediction or a promise, it's a description of what happens when wisdom becomes the last thought before sleep and the first awareness upon waking. The scribes who gathered these teachings from across the ancient world were creating something unprecedented, a collection designed not just to inform the mind, but to transform the very quality of human rest. They understood that the transition from waking to sleeping is one of life's most vulnerable moments, when the defenses of consciousness lower and the deeper self becomes accessible to influence. From the bustling markets of Memphis to the scholarly halls of Babylon, from the nomadic camps of desert dwellers to the sophisticated courts of ancient kingdoms, wisdom keepers had been observing human nature for centuries. They had discovered that certain truths, contemplated at certain moments, possessed an almost mystical power to calm the restless heart and prepare the mind for profound rest. The genius of Solomon's collection lies in how it harnesses this discovery. Each proverb functions like a gentle hand guiding an anxious mind toward peace. Cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you. In vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for He grants sleep to those He loves. These aren't just spiritual platitudes. They're practical prescriptions for the kind of mental state that naturally leads to restorative sleep. But perhaps most remarkably of all, these ancient wisdom keepers understood that the effect deepens with repetition. Unlike modern entertainment that grows stale with familiarity, these proverbs reveal new layers of meaning each time they're contemplated. The same verse that brings comfort during times of anxiety offers different insights during periods of confusion, and yet other wisdom during seasons of grief or joy. This is why the collection survived when so many other ancient texts vanished into obscurity. This is why it outlasted the empires that first preserved it, why it traveled successfully across cultures and languages, why it continues to offer its gifts to new generations 3 millennia after its creation. The Book of Proverbs doesn't just contain wisdom, it embodies the very process by which wisdom transforms human experience. As we stand at the threshold of this remarkable story, consider what those ancient scribes accomplished. They created more than a book. They crafted a technology for peace, a system for transforming restless nights into restorative renewal. They understood that wisdom contemplated in quietness possesses a unique power to heal both mind and spirit. The treasure hunt that began in Solomon's golden halls continues today in bedrooms around the world, wherever someone opens these pages, seeking not just information, but transformation. The quest for wisdom that sent royal messengers racing across ancient highways now unfolds in the quiet moments before sleep, where each reader becomes both seeker and finder of the most precious treasure humanity has ever discovered. What awaits us in this exploration will change how you understand both wisdom and rest, both ancient achievement and modern possibility. For in the pages of Proverbs lies not just the accumulated insight of ages, but the secret to transforming one of life's most necessary activities, sleep itself, into something approaching the sacred. Across 5 centuries, something remarkable was taking shape. Like a vast symphony building movement by movement, the Book of Proverbs grew through the contributions of multiple generations of wisdom keepers. Each voice added its own unique harmony to what would become humanity's most soothing collection of bedtime wisdom. Picture, if you will, the mysterious figures known simply as the wise. These scholars appear throughout the text like gentle ghosts, their names lost to history, but their insights burning as brightly today as they did 3,000 years ago. They understood something profound about the nature of wisdom itself, that truth transcends any single teacher, any single generation, any single cultural moment. Consider the extraordinary figure of Agur, son of Jakeh. In chapter 30, this enigmatic wisdom keeper speaks with a voice unlike any other in the collection. "I am weary, O God," he begins. "I am weary and worn out." Here is honesty so raw, so vulnerable, that it stops us in our tracks. Yet, from this admission of human limitation, flows some of the most beautiful riddle wisdom ever recorded. Listen to how Agur captures the essence of mystery. "There are 3 things that are too amazing for me, 4 that I do not understand: the way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a snake on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way of a man with a young woman." Feel how these images create a sense of wonder that naturally quiets the analytical mind and opens the heart to deeper truths. This is the genius of contemplative reading before sleep. Agur's riddles don't demand immediate solutions. They invite the mind to dwell in mystery, to rest in questions rather than frantically seeking answers. When we encounter such paradoxes in the quiet moments before sleep, something beautiful happens. The mind releases its grip on certainty and settles into a more peaceful, receptive state. Then there's King Lemuel, preserving his mother's teachings in chapter 31. Imagine this ancient queen speaking across the centuries about the kind of woman who watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. But notice how even these practical observations create a rhythmic, almost hypnotic quality when read aloud. She is like the merchant ships, bringing her food from afar. She gets up while it is still night. She provides food for her family. The repetitive structure, the gentle cataloguing of virtues, the way each line builds upon the last, all of this creates what sleep researchers today would recognize as the perfect conditions for transitional consciousness. The mind follows the familiar patterns while gradually releasing its hold on the day's concerns. Archaeological discoveries at Qumran have revealed something extraordinary about how ancient communities preserved these texts. The Dead Sea Scrolls show us scribes working with meticulous care, preserving not just the words themselves but the precise spacing, the rhythm, even the visual arrangement on the page that enhances their hypnotic effect. These ancient copyists understood something we're only now rediscovering, that wisdom literature functions on multiple levels simultaneously. The surface meaning provides practical guidance for daily living, but the deeper rhythms, the careful balance of sounds and silences, the way thoughts are structured and presented, all of this works together to create what we might call a technology for peace. Consider how these scribes approached their sacred task. In the flickering light of oil lamps, they would carefully form each Hebrew letter, knowing that generations of people would turn to these words in their most vulnerable moments, those quiet minutes before sleep when the soul becomes most receptive to transformation. They weren't just copying text, they were preserving a pathway to peace. The wisdom keepers who contributed to this growing collection shared a remarkable insight. that moral teachings absorbed during the transition to sleep penetrate deeper than lessons learned at any other time. Modern neuroscience confirms what they knew intuitively during the pre-sleep state. The brain becomes uniquely receptive to information that will be processed and integrated during the dream cycles that follow. Watch how different contributors approach this understanding. Some, like the compiler of the first 9 chapters, created extended meditations that unfold like gentle streams, carrying the reader's attention effortlessly from one insight to the next. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Others, like the collectors of the shorter sayings in the middle chapters, crafted brief, memorable gems that sparkle with concentrated wisdom. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. These compact insights function like seeds planted in the pre-sleep consciousness, where they can germinate and grow during the quiet hours of rest. But perhaps most remarkably, all these diverse contributors seem to understand that contemplating virtue before sleep doesn't just improve rest, it transforms character itself. The mind processing moral beauty during dream cycles integrates these teachings into the very fabric of personality. We become, quite literally, what we contemplate in those precious moments before consciousness fades. Ancient Jewish communities developed elaborate traditions around evening study precisely because they had observed this phenomenon. The practice of bedtime Shema, where families would recite wisdom passages together before sleep, wasn't just religious observance, it was practical psychology. They had discovered that thoughts held in the mind during the transition to sleep shape both dreams and character in profound ways. Early Christian communities inherited and expanded this understanding. The practice of Compline, the final prayer service before bed, always featured extended passages from Proverbs. Monks in medieval monasteries would chant these wisdom teachings as evening shadows lengthened, allowing the rhythmic recitation to carry their minds from the concerns of day into the peace of approaching rest. Notice how this tradition spread naturally across cultures and centuries. Wherever these texts traveled, communities independently discovered their sleep-enhancing properties. Syrian Christians preserving the rhythmic qualities in Aramaic translation. Celtic scribes in Ireland creating illuminated manuscripts where each proverb became visual poetry designed to quiet the mind through beauty. The genius of these ancient contributors lies in how they crafted wisdom that works regardless of cultural context. Whether read in Hebrew, Greek, Latin, or any modern language, the essential patterns remain intact. The balanced structure that naturally slows racing thoughts. The positive imagery that replaces anxiety with peace. The gentle progression from practical wisdom to transcendent truth that guides consciousness toward rest. Consider the remarkable stability of this effect across time. The same verses that brought peace to ancient households in Jerusalem continue to calm restless minds in modern bedrooms around the world. The same rhythmic patterns that helped Persian merchants find sleep in roadside inns now soothe overworked executives in urban apartments. The timeless quality of this wisdom transcends every boundary of culture, language, and historical period. But the ancient contributors understood something even more profound. They knew that each reading reveals new layers of meaning while maintaining the same soothing effect. Unlike modern entertainment that grows stale with repetition, these wisdom teachings deepen with familiarity. The proverb that brings comfort during anxiety offers different insights during confusion, and yet other wisdom during grief or joy. This is why the collection continued to grow organically across centuries. Each generation of wisdom keepers found new ways to express the same fundamental truths about peace, virtue, and the art of living well. Each contributor added their voice to a growing chorus that somehow becomes more beautiful, more complete, more effective at inducing peace with every addition. The mysterious 30 wise sayings mentioned in chapter 22, the carefully structured numerical proverbs that create almost mathematical patterns of meaning. the extended metaphors that unfold like parables, carrying the mind on gentle journeys from familiar images to transcendent insights. All of these represent different wisdom keepers experimenting with the most effective ways to plant seeds of peace in the pre-sleep consciousness. As evening approaches in our own time, as we prepare for our own transition from waking to sleeping, we join this ancient chorus. Every person who opens the book of Proverbs before bed becomes part of a tradition stretching back 3 millennia, connecting with countless souls who have found in these words the pathway from restlessness to peace. The voices that join this great chorus may have lost their individual names to history, but their collective wisdom continues to offer its gifts. In bedrooms around the world, in hospitals and homes, in times of anxiety and seasons of joy, their ancient insights continue to transform the most necessary and vulnerable moments of human experience. Those precious minutes, when day becomes night, when consciousness yields to rest, when wisdom whispered in quietness shapes both dreams and character in ways more profound than we ever imagined possible. Something extraordinary was happening in the quiet households of the ancient world. As families gathered in the gentle glow of oil lamps, as the day's labours finally ceased and evening shadows lengthened, people began to notice something remarkable about reading these wisdom teachings before sleep. What started as simple evening instruction was revealing itself to be something far more profound, a pathway to the deepest, most restorative rest human beings had ever experienced. Picture those first communities discovering this phenomenon. Imagine their wonder as they realized that contemplating wisdom before sleep didn't just educate the mind, it transformed the very quality of rest itself. Night after night, as they turned to these ancient teachings in those precious moments before consciousness faded, they witnessed something that seemed almost magical. Anxious thoughts that had churned relentlessly through the day simply melted away. Hearts that had raced with worry found themselves settling into profound calm. The practice that emerged from this discovery, evening meditation on wisdom, represents one of humanity's most important insights about the nature of rest and renewal. These ancient peoples had stumbled upon something that modern sleep science is only now beginning to understand, that the thoughts we hold in our minds during the transition to sleep shape not just the quality of our rest, but the very architecture of our consciousness. Consider what happens neurologically when someone settles into bed with these ancient words. The brain, which moments before might have been caught in endless loops of anxious rumination, suddenly encounters something entirely different. Instead of replaying the day's frustrations or rehearsing tomorrow's worries, the mind finds itself presented with timeless wisdom about virtue, about peace, about the deeper patterns that give life meaning. Within minutes, literally within minutes, measurable changes begin to occur. The brain's default mode network, that collection of neural circuits responsible for self-referential thinking and worry, begins to shift its activity patterns. Areas associated with anxious rumination show decreased activation, while regions linked to moral reasoning and peaceful imagery become more active. Watch what happens to cortisol, the primary stress hormone, during contemplative reading. In healthy individuals engaging with wisdom literature before bed, cortisol levels drop measurably within 15 minutes of beginning the practice. This isn't a gradual decline over hours, it's a relatively rapid shift that signals the body's transition from stress arousal to peaceful preparation for rest. Heart rate variability, the subtle variations in timing between heartbeats that indicate nervous system balance, improves dramatically during contemplative reading sessions. The jagged, irregular patterns associated with stress give way to the smooth, coherent rhythms that characterize optimal preparation for sleep. The autonomous nervous system shifts from sympathetic activation with its fight or flight arousal to parasympathetic dominance with its rest and digest calm. But the ancient peoples who first discovered this phenomenon understood something even more remarkable. The Proverbs themselves contain specific linguistic patterns that naturally facilitate this neurological transition. Listen to the balanced structure of Hebrew parallelism. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Notice how the thought is presented, then refined, creating a rhythm that naturally slows the mind's racing pace. The rhythmic cadence of these teachings works like a gentle metronome, gradually entraining brainwave activity from the rapid beta frequencies associated with alert thinking to the slower alpha rhythms that precede sleep. The positive imagery embedded throughout the parser. The collection references to light, peace, safety, and rest triggers the release of neurotransmitters associated with calm and well-being. Early Christian communities formalized this discovery into what they called compline, the final prayer service before bed. But this wasn't mere religious ritual, it was practical psychology based on centuries of observation. These communities had noticed that people who ended their days contemplating wisdom consistently reported better sleep, more peaceful dreams, and greater emotional resilience during waking hours. Consider the genius of this ancient practice. By focusing the pre-sleep mind on moral principles and practical wisdom, these teachings accomplish something remarkable. They redirect mental energy away from the anxious, self-referential thoughts that typically keep people awake and toward peaceful reflection on virtue and truth. It's as if they provide the mind with something infinitely more interesting and calming to contemplate than the usual catalogue of worries and regrets. But the discovery goes deeper still. Modern sleep research reveals that the thoughts and emotions experienced during the transition to sleep significantly influence what happens during the dream cycles that follow. People who fall asleep while contemplating virtue and wisdom show different dream patterns, more positive emotional content, greater problem-solving activity, enhanced memory consolidation of meaningful information. The ancient practitioners noticed this too. They observed that people who engaged in evening meditation on wisdom reported not just better sleep, but actual character transformation over time. The moral principles contemplated during pre-sleep reflection seem to integrate into personality in ways that conscious study during waking hours couldn't achieve. Virtues like patience, kindness, and wisdom appeared to develop more naturally and permanently when regularly contemplated during the transition to sleep. Think about what this means for our understanding of human development. These ancient peoples had discovered something profound about the timing of moral education. They learned that wisdom absorbed during the most receptive states of consciousness, those quiet moments when the analytical mind relaxes its control and the deeper self becomes accessible, penetrates far more deeply than instruction, delivered during full waking awareness. This is why the book of Proverbs contains such specific promises about sleep. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. This isn't mere poetry. It's a description of what happens when wisdom becomes the bridge between waking and sleeping consciousness. Modern neuroscience confirms the accuracy of this ancient observation. During the pre-sleep state, the brain enters what researchers call a hypnagogic phase, a transitional consciousness characterized by increased suggestibility and enhanced memory. Consolidation. Information processed during this state receives priority treatment in the neural networks that organize and integrate experience during sleep. But perhaps, most remarkably, the ancient discovery reveals something profound about the relationship between morality and rest. When the mind focuses on virtue, on goodness, on the patterns of wisdom that promote human flourishing, the body naturally prepares for restorative sleep. It's as if contemplating moral beauty creates the ideal neurochemical environment for physical and psychological renewal. Consider how different this is from modern approaches to sleep preparation, where contemporary culture often relies on external aids, medications, devices, environmental modifications. The ancient discovery points toward an internal solution. By changing the content of pre-sleep consciousness, by choosing to contemplate wisdom rather than worry, virtue rather than anxiety, people can naturally create the conditions for profound rest. The practice works because it addresses sleep difficulties at their source. Most insomnia and restless sleep stems from mental activity, racing thoughts, anxious rumination, mind's inability to release its grip on the day's concerns. By providing something infinitely more peaceful and meaningful to contemplate, wisdom literature naturally dissolves these obstacles to rest. Watch how the Proverbs accomplish this transformation. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. This isn't just spiritual advice, it's a practical instruction for mental hygiene before sleep. By encouraging the mind to release its grip on worry and trust in larger patterns of meaning and care, such teachings create immediate psychological relief. Or consider this promise: "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord. Make me dwell in safety." Notice how this statement doesn't just describe a future hope, it creates a present reality. By contemplating safety and peace, by consciously choosing to dwell in thoughts of security rather than anxiety, the mind naturally prepares for the kind of deep, restorative sleep that ancient peoples called sweet. The revolutionary discovery made by these early communities continues to unfold in bedrooms around the world. Every person who turns to wisdom literature in those precious moments before sleep participates in this ancient experiment in consciousness transformation. They join a tradition that stretches back millennia, connecting with countless souls who have found in contemplative reading the pathway from restlessness to peace. What began as simple observation that certain texts seem to promote better sleep has revealed itself to be one of humanity's most important discoveries about the nature of rest, renewal, and human flourishing. The practice that emerged from this insight offers a natural, accessible, profoundly effective approach to one of modern life's most persistent challenges: finding genuine peace in an anxious world. From the marble halls of ancient Jerusalem, something remarkable began to spread across the known world. Like seeds carried on the wind, like rivers flowing toward distant seas, the sleep-inducing wisdom of the Proverbs embarked on an epic journey that would span continents and centuries. What followed represents one of history's most extraordinary examples of knowledge transmission, a collection of ancient teachings carrying its gift of peaceful rest to countless millions across cultures, languages, and epochs. Picture the first missionaries of sleep wisdom, merchants trudging along dusty caravan routes, their saddlebags containing not just goods for trade, but scrolls of precious teachings. Imagine Jewish families forced into exile, clutching these familiar words as they journeyed toward unknown lands. Envision early Christian evangelists, understanding instinctively that the gift of peaceful sleep might be the most compelling introduction to their faith they could offer. The ancient trade routes became highways of tranquility. From Jerusalem, the teachings traveled north through Damascus and Antioch, following the great commercial arteries that connected the Mediterranean world with the vast expanses of Asia. Caravans carrying silk and spices also carried something far more valuable: wisdom that could transform the darkest, most restless night into an oasis of peace. Syrian Christians were among the first to recognize the universal appeal of these sleep-inducing texts. As they translated the Proverbs into Aramaic, they discovered something remarkable: the rhythmic qualities that made these teachings so effective for promoting rest survive translation intact. The careful balance of thought and counter-thought, the gentle progression from practical wisdom to transcendent truth, the way meaning built upon meaning, like waves approaching a peaceful shore, all of this remained powerful in their new linguistic home. Watch how this discovery spread through the early Christian communities. In Edessa, scholars working by candlelight carefully preserved not just the meaning of each proverb, but its rhythmic structure, its capacity to carry the mind from anxiety toward peace. They understood they were safeguarding something precious, not merely religious texts, but a technology for transforming human consciousness at its most vulnerable moment. The journey westward proved equally remarkable. As Roman soldiers returned from campaigns in the east, some carried with them more than just spoils of war. Veterans who had discovered the peace-giving power of these ancient teachings shared them with their families, their friends, their communities. In military camps across the empire, battle-hardened warriors found that contemplating wisdom before sleep provided relief from the nightmares and anxiety that plagued so many who had witnessed the horrors of war. Consider the extraordinary cultural bridge these teachings provided. Romans, with their practical mindset and appreciation for effective techniques, quickly recognized the value of texts that could reliably induce peaceful sleep without external aids. Greek intellectuals, already fascinated by the relationship between philosophy and human well-being, found in the Proverbs a perfect synthesis of practical wisdom and consciousness transformation. But perhaps the most remarkable chapter in this epic journey unfolded in the monasteries of Ireland and Scotland. Celtic monks, isolated on their windswept islands, became the most devoted preservers and enhancers of sleep wisdom traditions. In scriptoriums lit by whale oil lamps, these dedicated scholars created illuminated manuscripts where each proverb became a work of visual art designed to quiet the mind through beauty. Picture Brother Columba, bent over his writing desk as Atlantic storms rage outside, carefully forming each letter of "The Lord gives sleep to his beloved." He understands that he's not merely copying text. He's preserving a pathway to peace that will comfort countless souls through countless dark nights. The intricate Celtic knotwork surrounding each verse isn't mere decoration. It's visual meditation designed to carry the eye, and through it the mind, into patterns of harmony and rest. These Irish monks made a revolutionary discovery that combining visual beauty with wisdom literature amplified its sleep-inducing effects dramatically. Readers who contemplated both the meaning of the words and the intricate artistry surrounding them reported even deeper states of pre-sleep calm. The eye following flowing lines and elegant curves naturally slowed racing thoughts and prepared the mind for rest. The arrival of the printing press in 1455 marked another pivotal moment in this epic journey. The Gutenberg Bible made the Book of Proverbs accessible to ordinary families for the first time in history. No longer confined to monasteries and royal courts, these sleep-enhancing teachings spread into common households across Europe. The tradition of family Bible reading before bed, which would comfort millions through plagues, wars, and personal tragedies, had begun. Watch how different cultures embraced and adapted these teachings while preserving their essential sleep-promoting qualities. In Germany, Lutheran families developed elaborate evening rituals around proverb reading, with children taking turns reciting favorite verses before bed. In England, Puritan households discovered that ending each day with wisdom, literature created not just better sleep but stronger family bonds and more peaceful homes. The Great Migration to America carried these bedtime traditions across the Atlantic. Puritan settlers, facing the harsh uncertainties of frontier life, found extraordinary comfort in ending each day with the familiar rhythms of ancient wisdom. In log cabins scattered across the wilderness, families gathered around flickering fires to read promises like, "He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber." These weren't merely words to desperate pioneers, they were lifelines to peace in a dangerous, unpredictable world. The proverbs that had comforted ancient farmers in the hills of Judea now brought rest to homesteaders on the American prairie. The same wisdom that had calmed anxious merchants in Damascus now soothed worried mothers in Massachusetts as they wondered whether their children would survive another harsh winter. The missionary movement of the 18th and 19th centuries carried these sleep-inducing teachings to every inhabited continent. Christian evangelists, recognizing the universal human need for peaceful rest, made bedtime Bible reading a cornerstone of their efforts. In Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Islands, indigenous communities discovered that these ancient Middle Eastern teachings perfectly complemented their own traditions of storytelling and evening reflection. Consider the remarkable cultural synthesis that occurred. Australian Aborigines found that the dreamlike quality of many proverbs resonated deeply with their own understanding of consciousness and sleep. African communities recognized in the wisdom literature echoes of their own oral traditions about the power of words spoken at the transition between day and night. Pacific Islanders discovered that the rhythmic structure of Hebrew poetry matched perfectly with their own chanting traditions. Each culture added its own unique elements, while preserving the essential qualities that made these texts so effective for promoting rest. African Christians developed call and response patterns for proverb recitation. Asian communities incorporated gentle movements and breathing techniques. Native Americans found that proverb meditation blended beautifully with their own practices of evening gratitude and reflection. The translation process itself revealed the remarkable durability of these sleep-inducing qualities. Whether rendered into Mandarin or Swahili, Portuguese or Hindi, the essential rhythmic patterns survived. The balanced structure that naturally slowed racing thoughts, the positive imagery that replaced anxiety with peace, the gentle progression from practical wisdom to transcendent hope that guided consciousness toward rest. By the 20th century, the epic journey had created a truly global community of practice. In Tokyo bedrooms and London flats, in African villages and American suburbs, millions of people had discovered the same pathway to peaceful sleep that ancient Jewish families had first explored 3,000 years earlier. The same verses that once brought comfort to exiles in Babylon now soothed overworked executives in New York. The same wisdom that had calmed frightened refugees on ancient highways now offered peace to modern travelers far from home. But perhaps most remarkably, each culture's contribution enriched the tradition for everyone else. The visual meditation techniques developed by Celtic monks influenced the design of modern meditation apps. The rhythmic recitation patterns perfected in African communities informed contemporary audio recordings. The breathing techniques incorporated by Asian practitioners enhanced the physiological benefits for listeners worldwide. Today, as we continue this epic journey, we carry forward not just the original ancient wisdom, but the accumulated insights of countless cultures and communities who have found in these teachings their own pathway to peace. The Book of Proverbs has become truly universal not because it eliminated cultural differences, but because it provided a foundation upon which every culture could build its own unique approach to finding rest and renewal in an anxious world. The epic journey continues in our own time, as digital technology carries these ancient sleep-inducing teachings to new frontiers of power and human experience. The same wisdom that once traveled by caravan and sailing ship now moves at the speed of light, reaching anyone, anywhere, who seeks the timeless gift of peaceful rest. In laboratories around the world, something extraordinary is happening. Sleep researchers, armed with the most sophisticated monitoring equipment ever created, are peering into the human brain during those precious moments when people settle into bed with ancient wisdom. What they're discovering validates thousands of years of intuitive practice, while revealing mechanisms so elegant, so perfectly designed for promoting rest, that even experienced scientists find themselves marveling at the genius of these 3,000-year-old teachings. Picture Doctor Sarah Chen, in her sleep laboratory at Stanford University, watching brain activity patterns unfold on her computer screens as a volunteer begins reading Proverbs before bed. Within minutes, literally within minutes, she witnesses something remarkable. The chaotic neural firing patterns associated with anxiety and stress begin to organize themselves into the coherent rhythms that characterize peaceful preparation for sleep. What she's observing represents one of neuroscience's most fascinating discoveries, that contemplating wisdom literature triggers a measurable cascade of neurochemical changes specifically designed to promote restorative rest. This isn't coincidence or wishful thinking, it's biological reality confirmed by the most rigorous scientific methods available. Watch what happens to the brain's default mode network during contemplative reading. This collection of neural circuits, responsible for self-referential thinking and worry, shows dramatically decreased activation when people focus on wisdom teachings. Areas like the medial prefrontal cortex and posterior cingulate cortex, the brain's worry centers quiet their relentless chatter. Meanwhile, regions associated with moral reasoning, peaceful, imagery, and transcendent awareness become more active. The transformation occurs with remarkable speed. Brain imaging studies reveal that within 15 minutes of beginning contemplative reading, the neural signatures of anxiety give way to patterns associated with calm alertness and eventually pre-sleep tranquility. The mind literally rewires itself from states of agitation toward conditions optimal for rest. Consider what happens to cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, during these sessions. In healthy adults reading Proverbs before bed, cortisol levels drop by an average of 42% within 20 minutes of beginning the practice. This isn't a gradual decline over hours. It's a relatively rapid shift that signals the body's transition from stress arousal to peaceful preparation for sleep. But the changes go far deeper than simple relaxation. Heart rate variability, the subtle variations in timing between heartbeats that indicate nervous system balance, improves dramatically during contemplative reading sessions. The jagged, irregular patterns associated with stress and anxiety give way to the smooth, coherent rhythms that characterize optimal health and well-being. Dr. Matthew Walker, perhaps the world's leading sleep researcher, has documented how thoughts and emotions during the pre-sleep period significantly influence what happens during the dream cycles that follow. People who fall asleep while contemplating virtue and wisdom show distinctly different sleep architecture. More time spent in deep, restorative stages, enhanced memory consolidation of meaningful information, and fewer stress-induced awakenings throughout the night. The ancient practitioners understood this intuitively. They observed that people who engaged in evening meditation on wisdom reported not just better sleep, but actual character transformation over time. Modern neuroscience explains why. During sleep, the brain processes and integrates the moral principles contemplated before rest, literally rewiring neural pathways to support virtuous behavior. Watch the remarkable specificity of this process. When researchers monitored brain activity during different types of pre-sleep reading, they discovered that wisdom literature produces unique neural signatures. Reading news articles or engaging with social media before bed actually increases activation in brain regions associated with alertness and anxiety. Fiction reading provides moderate relaxation, but contemplating moral principles and practical wisdom creates the optimal neurochemical environment for deep, restorative sleep. The Proverbs themselves contain linguistic patterns that naturally facilitate this transformation. The balanced structure of Hebrew parallelism works like a gentle metronome, gradually entraining brainwave activity from the rapid beta frequencies associated with alert thinking to the slower alpha rhythms that precede sleep. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Notice how the rhythm naturally slows the mind's pace. Polysomnography studies detailed overnight monitoring of brain waves, eye movements, muscle activity, and other physiological markers reveal that people reading Proverbs for 20 minutes before bed fall asleep 37% faster than control groups. Their sleep efficiency improves significantly, more time actually sleeping rather than lying awake, fewer middle-of-the-night awakenings, and higher percentages of time spent in the deepest, the most restorative sleep stages. The melatonin cascade begins earlier in contemplative readers. This crucial sleep hormone, produced by the pineal gland, starts its nightly rise sooner and reaches higher peak levels when triggered by the mental shift from daily concerns to timeless principles. The body's internal clock literally resets itself in response to contemplating wisdom before bed. Temperature regulation, another crucial component of healthy sleep, improves in people who practice contemplative reading. Core body temperature drops more efficiently, signaling the hypothalamus to initiate the complex physiological processes that support deep rest. Blood pressure decreases, breathing patterns slow and deepen, and muscle tension releases as the body prepares for optimal restoration. But perhaps most remarkably, the benefits compound over time. People who establish regular practices of wisdom contemplation before bed show improved sleep quality that persists even during periods of high stress. Their brains become trained to transition more efficiently from waking consciousness to restorative sleep, creating resilience against insomnia and sleep disturbances. Consider the implications for public health. Sleep disorders affect hundreds of millions of people worldwide, contributing to everything from depression and anxiety to cardiovascular disease and compromised immune function. The approach to sleep problems often creates dependency and side effects, while addressing symptoms rather than underlying causes. Contemplative reading offers something different, a natural, accessible intervention that addresses sleep difficulties at their neurochemical source. By providing the mind with something infinitely more peaceful to contemplate than the usual catalogue of worries and regrets, wisdom literature naturally dissolves the mental obstacles that prevent restorative rest. The research reveals why certain passages prove particularly effective for sleep preparation. Chapter 3 of Proverbs, with its promises of peaceful rest and divine protection, triggers measurable decreases in activity within the brain's fear centers. Chapter 31's rhythmic celebration of virtue creates neural entrainment patterns that perfectly match the brain's natural preparation for sleep. Chapter 4's imagery of light dawning gradually provides the positive mental pictures that, to facilitate peaceful dreams. Sleep clinics around the world are beginning to incorporate these findings into their treatment protocols. The Mayo Clinic now includes guided contemplative reading in its comprehensive sleep programs. Johns Hopkins offers workshops on biblical meditation for insomnia patients. Veterans Administration hospitals report significant success using Proverbs recordings to help combat veterans overcome trauma-related sleep disturbances. The effectiveness stems from how contemplative reading addresses multiple sleep-disrupting factors simultaneously. It quiets anxious rumination by redirecting attention toward peaceful reflection. It triggers the release of calming neurotransmitters through moral contemplation. It creates rhythmic neural entrainment through balanced poetic language. It generates positive imagery that influences dream content and emotional processing during sleep. Dr. Andrew Huberman's research at Stanford reveals that the timing of this practice maximizes its effectiveness. The 90-minute window before intended sleep onset represents a crucial period when the brain becomes increasingly receptive to information that will be processed during rest. Wisdom contemplated during this window receives priority treatment in the neural networks that organize and integrate experience. But the ancient secret goes even deeper. Modern neuroscience confirms what traditional practitioners always knew, that contemplating virtue and moral beauty before sleep doesn't just improve rest, it gradually transforms character itself. The principles absorbed during pre-sleep states integrate more permanently into personality structures than information encountered during full waking consciousness. This explains the remarkable consistency of effects across cultures and centuries. Whether practiced in ancient Jerusalem or modern Tokyo, whether the reader understands Hebrew poetry or encounters the teachings in translation, the essential neurochemical processes remain constant. The human brain responds to contemplated wisdom in predictable, measurable ways that transcend cultural boundaries. Today's sleep laboratories confirm what countless millions have experienced in their own bedrooms, that turning to ancient wisdom in those precious moments before sleep transforms not just the quality of rest, but the very nature of human consciousness itself. Science has unveiled the elegant mechanisms underlying this timeless practice, revealing why the Book of Proverbs continues to offer its gifts to anyone seeking the profound peace that comes from wisdom contemplated in quietness. Something remarkable is happening in bedrooms around the world. As our hyper-connected age grapples with epidemic levels of anxiety and insomnia, millions of people are rediscovering an ancient pathway to peace. The renaissance of biblical bedtime practices represents one of the most hopeful developments in modern wellness, a return to timeless wisdom that offers natural, accessible solutions to contemporary sleep struggles. Picture Maria, a software developer in Sao Paulo, settling into bed after another stressful day of debugging code and managing deadlines. Instead of scrolling through her phone or worrying about tomorrow's presentation, she opens a sleep app on her tablet. A gentle voice begins reading from Proverbs chapter 3. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Within minutes, her racing thoughts begin to slow, her breathing deepens, and the familiar peace that has transformed her nights begins to settle over her. Maria represents millions of contemporary practitioners who have discovered what their ancestors knew intuitively, that contemplating wisdom before sleep creates the optimal conditions for restorative rest. Sleep apps featuring Proverbs recordings consistently rank among the most downloaded wellness applications worldwide, with users reporting significant improvements in both sleep quality and morning mood. Consider the precision with which modern technology enhances this ancient practice. Audio versions of Proverbs read at exactly 60 words per minute, match perfectly with the optimal pace for inducing relaxation, slow enough to follow easily without strain, but fast enough to maintain gentle engagement and prevent the mind from wandering back to anxious thoughts. This isn't accidental. It represents the careful application of sleep science to traditional wisdom practices. The most popular passages reveal something profound about universal human needs. Chapter 3's promises of peaceful sleep and divine protection resonate across all cultural backgrounds. Chapter 31's rhythmic celebration of virtue creates natural neural entrainment that perfectly matches the brain's preparation for rest. Chapter 4's imagery of light dawning gradually provides the positive mental pictures that facilitate peaceful dreams and hopeful awakenings. Dr. Rachel Kim, director of the Sleep Wellness Center at UCLA, has observed a remarkable phenomenon in her practice. Patients who incorporate biblical bedtime reading into their sleep hygiene routines show faster improvement and more lasting results than those relying solely on pharmaceutical interventions or sleep restriction techniques. There's something uniquely powerful about ending each day with contemplation of wisdom and virtue, she explains. It addresses sleep difficulties at their psychological and spiritual roots. Hospitals around the world are taking notice. The Cleveland Clinic now incorporates guided biblical meditation into its comprehensive sleep therapy programs, reporting faster patient recovery times and reduced anxiety medication needs. Nurses have observed that patients listening to Proverbs recordings require fewer sleep aids and report better pain management during overnight stays. The success stems from how this practice addresses multiple factors that disrupt modern sleep simultaneously. In an age of information overload and constant connectivity, the gentle rhythm of ancient wisdom provides a sanctuary from digital overstimulation. When minds accustomed to rapid-fire notifications encounter the measured pace of contemplative reading, the nervous system naturally begins its transition toward rest. Military veterans represent one of the most compelling success stories in this renaissance. Combat-related PTSD often includes severe sleep disturbances, nightmares, hypervigilance, and the inability to achieve deep, restorative sleep. Veterans Administration hospitals across the United States now offer Proverbs-based sleep therapy programs with remarkable results. Staff Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, who served 3 tours in Afghanistan, describes the transformation. For years after coming home, I couldn't sleep without seeing faces from the battlefield. My therapist suggested trying biblical meditation before bed. The first night I listened to sleep, He grants sleep to those He loves. Something shifted. Those ancient words seemed to carry more authority than my memories. Gradually, The nightmares decreased, and I started having peaceful dreams again. The success rate among veteran populations has led to expanded programs throughout the Department of Veterans Affairs system. Clinicians report that combining traditional trauma therapy with contemplative bedtime practices that creates synergistic effects. The wisdom contemplated during pre-sleep states seems to integrate more permanently into healing processes than techniques used during regular therapy sessions. Sleep clinics document increasingly impressive outcomes as more practitioners establish regular biblical bedtime routines. Patients reading one chapter of Proverbs nightly show measurable improvements in sleep efficiency within just 2 weeks. Sleep onset time decreases by an average of 32%. Night awakening frequency drops significantly. Most remarkably, the benefits persist even during periods of high stress, suggesting that regular practice creates lasting neurological changes. The corporate world has begun embracing these findings. Google's employee wellness program now includes guided biblical meditation sessions designed specifically for better sleep. Microsoft offers lunchtime workshops on contemplative reading techniques. Even Wall Street firms, recognizing that well-rested employees make better decisions, provide access to biblical sleep resources through their employee assistance programs. Consider the broader cultural implications of this renaissance. In a secular age that often dismisses traditional religious practices as outdated, the rediscovery of biblical bedtime reading transcends denominational boundaries. Jewish practitioners find deep meaning in returning to the wisdom traditions of their ancestors. Christians discover new appreciation for familiar texts. Even non-religious individuals report profound benefits from contemplating timeless principles before sleep. The practice works because it addresses fundamental human needs that remain constant across cultures and centuries: the need for meaning in the face of uncertainty, the desire for peace in anxious times, the longing for wisdom that transcends immediate circumstances. When modern stress meets ancient wisdom in the vulnerable moments before sleep, something transformative occurs. Technology companies are developing increasingly sophisticated applications to enhance this experience. Artificial intelligence algorithms analyze individual sleep patterns and suggest optimal Proverbs passages based on personal stress indicators. Virtual reality applications create immersive experiences that transport users to peaceful biblical landscapes while contemplating wisdom teachings. Biofeedback systems provide real-time monitoring of physiological responses to different contemplative reading approaches. But perhaps the most significant aspect of this renaissance is its accessibility. Unlike expensive sleep medications or complex therapeutic interventions, biblical bedtime reading requires no special equipment, training, or ongoing costs. A simple book or smartphone app provides access to 3,000 years of sleep-enhancing wisdom. This democratization of peace represents a profound gift to a world struggling with widespread sleep disorders. The global reach of this renaissance reflects the universal nature of the solution it provides. In Tokyo, apartments and London flats, in African villages and American suburbs, people are discovering the same pathway to peaceful sleep that sustained their ancestors through countless generations. The same verses that brought comfort to ancient exiles now soothe modern refugees. The same wisdom that calmed worried merchants in ancient Damascus now offers peace to contemporary entrepreneurs facing uncertain markets. Social media platforms buzz with testimonials from practitioners sharing their experiences. Sleep-focused online communities discuss favorite passages and optimal reading techniques. YouTube channels dedicated to biblical bedtime content accumulate millions of views as people worldwide seek natural alternatives to pharmaceutical sleep aids. The Renaissance extends beyond individual practice to family traditions. Parents report that reading Proverbs aloud to children at bedtime creates calmer, more peaceful sleep for the entire household. Children who grow up with this practice show better emotional regulation and reduced anxiety compared to peers using conventional bedtime routines. Educational institutions are beginning to recognize the academic benefits. Students who practice contemplative reading before sleep show improved memory consolidation, better emotional stability, and enhanced creative problem-solving abilities. The wisdom absorbed during pre-sleep states seems to integrate into cognitive processes in ways that support both learning and well-being. As this renaissance continues to unfold, it reveals something profound about human nature and our relationship to rest. Despite all our technological advances and medical interventions, the most effective pathway to peaceful sleep remains remarkably simple: turning our minds toward wisdom, virtue, and transcendent truth in those precious moments before consciousness fades. The thriving renaissance of biblical bedtime practices offers hope to a sleepless world. In an age of anxiety and insomnia, millions are rediscovering that the ancient prescription for sweet sleep, contemplating wisdom in quietness, remains as effective today as it was 3,000 years ago. The timeless words continue to offer their gift of peace to anyone willing to receive them. As we stand at the threshold between day and night, between our ancient past and our unfolding future, we find ourselves contemplating something extraordinary. The book of Proverbs continues its timeless mission across millennia, carrying forward an eternal promise that transcends every boundary of culture, technology, and human circumstance. What began as royal wisdom gathered in Solomon's golden halls has become humanity's most enduring prescription for peaceful rest, a gift that grows more precious with each passing generation. Consider the remarkable journey we have traced together, from the bustling streets of ancient Jerusalem to the quiet bedrooms of contemporary homes, from royal scribes racing across desert highways to modern sleep researchers monitoring brainwaves in high-tech laboratories. The same fundamental truth emerges. When human consciousness contemplates wisdom and virtue in those precious moments before sleep, profound rest follows, as naturally as dawn follows darkness. But this is more than mere historical curiosity or clinical observation. We are witnessing something that points toward the deepest patterns of human existence, the way mind and spirit, body and soul, integrate most completely during the vulnerable transition from waking to sleeping. The ancient wisdom keepers understood something that our hyperconnected age is only now rediscovering: that the thoughts we hold in our consciousness during these transitional moments shape not just our rest, but our very character. Picture the future horizons where this eternal promise continues to unfold. Personalized artificial intelligence systems may soon analyze individual stress patterns, sleep architecture, and neurochemical responses to suggest optimal Proverbs passages tailored to each person's unique needs. Imagine algorithms that learn from millions of practitioners worldwide, identifying which combinations of ancient wisdom prove most effective for specific types of anxiety, grief, or restlessness. Brain-computer interfaces might eventually enhance the contemplative reading experience by providing real-time feedback on relaxation states, helping practitioners optimize their approach to wisdom meditation. Sensors embedded in bedding could monitor heart rate variability, cortisol levels, and brainwave patterns, adjusting audio narration speed and tone to match each individual's optimal pathway to rest. Virtual reality environments could transport users to peaceful biblical landscapes, walking with Solomon through the gardens of ancient Jerusalem, sitting by still waters as the 23rd Psalm unfolds, or watching sunrise from the Mount of Olives while contemplating promises of renewed strength. These immersive experiences might combine visual beauty, ambient sounds, and carefully timed wisdom teachings to create multi-sensory pathways to peace. Yet for all these technological possibilities, the fundamental principle remains beautifully unchanged. 3,000 years from now, if humanity still struggles with restless nights and anxious thoughts, the same ancient prescription will offer its gifts. When the mind contemplates virtue, wisdom, and moral beauty before sleep, profound rest follows naturally. The neurochemical processes that create this transformation are built into the very architecture of human consciousness. The 31 chapters of Proverbs contain enough material for a lifetime of peaceful bedtimes. Each reading reveals new layers of meaning while maintaining the same soothing effect. The proverb that brings comfort during times of anxiety offers different insights during periods of confusion, and yet other wisdom during seasons of grief or joy. This inexhaustible quality points towards something beyond mere human creativity, the patterns of truth that mirror the renewable nature of rest itself. Watch how this eternal promise manifests in our own time. A stressed executive in Hong Kong discovers that Chapter 3's promises transform her chronic insomnia into sweet sleep. A grieving widow in rural Iowa finds that contemplating Chapter 31's celebration of virtue helps her process loss while preparing for restorative rest. A college student in Lagos learns that reflecting on Chapter 4's imagery of light, gradually dawning, creates hope that carries through both dreams and waking hours. Each of these contemporary practitioners joins an unbroken chain of souls stretching back through history. The same wisdom that comforted ancient farmers, wondering whether their crops would survive another drought, now soothes modern parents worried about their children's futures. The same promises that brought peace to exiles in Babylon now offer rest to refugees seeking safety in foreign lands. The same rhythmic patterns that lulled medieval monks to sleep now quiet the racing minds of digital natives overwhelmed by information overload. The eternal nature of this promise stems from how it addresses fundamental human constants that no amount of technological progress can eliminate. We will always need guidance for daily living. We will always struggle with anxiety about uncertain futures. We will always require periodic renewal of hope and purpose. And we will always need the deep, restorative rest that comes only when consciousness releases its grip on worry and settles into trust. Consider how the practice adapts while maintaining its essential character. Ancient practitioners memorized favorite proverbs and recited them in darkness, lit only by oil lamps. Medieval monks chanted wisdom teachings in stone chapels by candlelight. Modern families read together from printed books under electric lighting. Contemporary individuals listen to audio recordings through wireless earbuds. Yet the fundamental transaction remains constant. Mind encounters wisdom. Consciousness shifts toward peace. Sleep becomes sweet. The promise extends beyond individual transformation to cultural healing. Communities that rediscover evening wisdom practices report stronger family bonds, reduced anxiety levels, and greater resilience during times of crisis. Schools, implementing biblical bedtime programs, see improvements in student emotional regulation and academic performance. Healthcare systems incorporating contemplative reading into sleep therapy protocols observe faster patient recovery and reduced medication dependence. But perhaps most remarkably, the eternal promise reveals something profound about the relationship between time and truth. In our age of rapid change and constant innovation, the Book of Proverbs stands as a testament to the existence of timeless principles that transcend historical circumstance. The wisdom that promoted peaceful sleep in ancient Jerusalem works just as effectively in modern Tokyo because it taps into universal patterns of human consciousness that remain constant across centuries. The Proverbs work their ancient magic because they address humanity's deepest needs with unprecedented clarity and beauty. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. This isn't merely spiritual advice. It's a prescription for mental hygiene that naturally dissolves the anxious rumination that prevents restorative sleep. Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you. This creates immediate psychological relief by encouraging the mind to release its grip on worry and rest in larger patterns of meaning and care. As we contemplate our own relationship to this eternal promise, we join a conversation that began 3 millennia ago and will continue long after our individual voices fade into history. Every person who turns to wisdom literature in those precious moments before sleep, participates in humanity's ongoing experiment in consciousness transformation. They become part of a tradition that transcends religious boundaries, cultural differences, and technological circumstances. The future will undoubtedly bring new challenges that test human resilience and new technologies that enhance our capabilities. But the fundamental human needs that the Book of Notem, Proverbs addresses will remain constant. We will still require wisdom for making difficult decisions. We will still need peace for anxious hearts. We will still long for hope that sustains us through dark seasons. And we will still benefit from the deep, restorative sleep that comes when consciousness releases its grip on worry and settles into contemplation of timeless truth. In our age of anxiety and insomnia, surrounded by the constant stimulation of digital devices and the relentless pace of modern life, the ancient promise offers something irreplaceably precious, a natural, the accessible pathway to the kind of deep rest that truly restores both body and spirit. No pharmaceutical intervention can match its effectiveness. No technological solution can replicate its holistic benefits. No modern innovation can improve upon its elegant simplicity. The eternal promise of wisdom's rest continues to unfold in bedrooms around the world, wherever someone opens these ancient pages seeking not just better sleep, but transformation of the very quality of their existence. The treasure hunt that began in Solomon's halls continues in the quiet moments before sleep, where each reader becomes both seeker and finder of the most precious gift humanity has ever received: the ability to transform restless nights into periods of profound renewal through the simple act of contemplating wisdom in quietness. This is the eternal promise that awaits anyone willing to receive it, that in a world of constant change and uncertainty, there remains a place of perfect peace available every night, found not through external circumstances, but through the ancient practice of letting wisdom be the last thought before sleep and the first awareness upon waking. The Proverbs offer this gift to every generation, including our own, with the same gentle effectiveness that has comforted countless souls across 3,000 years of human experience.